The sun broke over the Montana horizon like liquid gold, spilling across the tarmac of Whitefish Regional Airport. Emma Morrison pressed her face against the cool glass of the terminal window, her breath fogging the pain as she watched her father complete the pre-flight walk-around inspection. At 11 years old, she'd witnessed this ritual countless times, but it never lost its magic. David Morrison moved with practiced precision around the white and blue Cessna 182, his experienced hands checking every surface, running along the wings, testing the ailerons and flaps. "Mom, can I go help Dad?" Emma turned to her mother, Sarah, who was reviewing weather reports on her tablet while sipping from a paper coffee cup. Sarah looked up, her warm brown eyes crinkling with a smile. "Finish your breakfast sandwich first, sweetheart. We've got plenty of time." She glanced at her watch. "Wheels up at 8:45. That gives us 20 minutes. Emma quickly stuffed the last bite of egg and cheese into her mouth, chewing rapidly. Her blonde ponytail bounced as she hopped from foot to foot with barely contained excitement. This wasn't just any flight. They were heading to Colorado Springs to spend a whole week with her grandparents for her birthday. A week of hiking, horseback riding, and her grandmother's famous chocolate cake. But more than that, her parents had promised she could log actual flight time, taking the controls at cruise altitude. "Okay, let's go," Sarah laughed, gathering their bags. Scout, their 3-year-old golden retriever, jumped up from where he'd been lying patiently, his tail wagging enthusiastically. The dog knew the routine as well as anyone. Airport meant adventure. Outside, the morning air was crisp and clean, carrying the scent of pine from the surrounding mountains. Emma ran across the tarmac toward her father, her sneakers slapping against the concrete. David turned as she approached, breaking into a broad grin. "There's my co-pilot," he said, ruffling her hair. "What do you think? Is she ready to fly?" Emma walked around the plane with exaggerated seriousness, mimicking her father's inspection. She crouched down to examine the landing gear, ran her small hand along the propeller blade, carefully, as he taught her, and peered into the engine compartment that David had already opened. "Looks good to me, Captain Morrison," she said with mock formality, saluting. David chuckled, his laugh lines deepening. At 42, he'd spent half his life in cockpits, first with the Air Force, flying C-130 transport planes, and now as a civilian flight instructor. He'd met Sarah at an aviation conference in Denver 12 years ago. She'd been a newly minted commercial pilot, fresh out of flight school, and he'd been immediately captivated by her passion for flying and her infectious laugh. Emma had inherited the best of both of them, her mother's quick mind and her father's calm demeanor. "All right, let's get loaded up," Sarah announced, arriving with their bags and Scout's travel crate. Though Scout was well-behaved enough to sit in the back seat, they always brought the crate for safety during takeoff and landing. The family worked together like a well-oiled machine. David stowed the luggage in the cargo compartment while Sarah secured Scout in the rear seat area with a special harness they'd had custom-made. Emma carefully placed her backpack in the footwell of her seat. It contained her journal, colored pencils, a book about Amelia Earhart, and her prized possession, a junior pilot logbook where she recorded every flight, even though the hours wouldn't count toward an actual license until she was older. "Emma, want to help me with the final checks?" her mother asked, sliding into the right seat. "Really?" Emma's eyes went wide. Usually she just watched from the back. "Come on up." Sarah patted the left seat, the captain's seat. Emma climbed in carefully, her feet barely reaching the rudder pedals. Her mother pulled out the checklist, and together they went through each item. Sarah would point to an instrument or control, and Emma would call out its status. "Fuel selector." "Both tanks," Emma said, checking the gauge. "Half full." "Flaps. Up. Trim." Emma adjusted the trim wheel slightly, set for takeoff. "Excellent." Sarah reached over and squeezed her daughter's shoulder. "You're learning fast, sweetie. Before you know it, you'll be doing this for real." David finished his external inspection and opened the pilot's door. "My turn." he said with a wink at Emma, who reluctantly climbed into the back seat. She buckled herself in, double-checking the harness the way her father had taught her. Scout's head rested on her lap, and she stroked his soft fur. The familiar sounds and sensations began. David's hands moved across the instrument panel with casual expertise. Master switch on, fuel pump engaged. The propeller began to turn, slowly at first, then faster until it became a spinning blur. The engine roared to life, and Emma felt the vibration through her seat, a feeling that always made her heart race with excitement. Whitefish ground, Cessna November 73 Quebec Bravo, at the terminal with information Delta, ready to taxi for departure to Colorado Springs. David spoke into the radio, his voice calm and professional. November 73 Quebec Bravo, taxi to runway 27 via taxiway Alpha, came the response. As they began moving across the tarmac, Emma looked out the window at the receding terminal, at the mountains rising majestic and purple in the distance, at the perfect blue sky that promised ideal flying conditions. She pulled out her logbook and wrote the date at the top of a new page. June 15, 2019. Departure, 8:47 a.m. Destination, Colorado Springs. Everything was perfect. The weather was clear, the plane was running smoothly, and her family was together. In her young mind, Emma thought this would be just another wonderful flight to add to her growing collection of memories. She had no idea that in 30 minutes, she would face a nightmare that would test everything her parents had ever taught her, and that she would be fighting, utterly alone, to save all their lives. The Cessna turned onto the runway, engines powering up, and lifted into the flawless Montana sky. 28 minutes into the flight, Emma was sketching the cloud formations in her journal when her father's voice cut through the steady drone of the engine. "Sarah, hand me the water bottle, would you?" There was something odd about his tone, slightly thick, as if he'd just woken from a nap. Emma glanced up from her drawing. Her mother reached for the bottle in the side pocket but fumbled with it, her movements unusually clumsy. "You okay?" Sarah asked David, her own words coming slower than normal. "Yeah, just feel a little weird, lightheaded maybe." David shook his head as if trying to clear it. "Probably should have had more coffee this morning." Emma watched her parents with growing curiosity. They were flying at 10,500 feet, cruising smoothly over the vast expanse of Wyoming wilderness. The landscape below was a patchwork of browns and greens, rolling hills, dense forests, and the occasional silver ribbon of a river. No towns, no roads, just endless wilderness. "I feel it too," Sarah said, pressing her fingers against her temples. "Pressure behind my eyes, that's strange." David blinked several times, trying to focus on the instruments. The numbers on the panel seemed to swim before his eyes. He'd experienced this sensation once before, years ago during high-altitude training in the Air Force. Recognition flickered in his brain, but his thoughts moved like molasses. "David," Sarah's voice carried a note of concern now. She was looking at him, noticing how pale he'd become. "David, you don't look good." "Neither do you," he managed to say, though forming the words took enormous effort. His hands felt heavy on the yoke, his reactions sluggish. Some distant, rational part of his mind was screaming a warning, but he couldn't quite grasp what it was trying to tell him. Emma sat forward in her seat, her journal forgotten. "Mom, Dad, what's wrong?" "Nothing, sweetie, we're just—" Sarah's sentence trailed off. She stared at the instrument panel as if seeing it for the first time, confused by the array of gauges and dials she'd read thousands of times before. David's military training kicked in through the fog in his brain. Something was very wrong. He needed to. What did he need to do? His hand moved toward the autopilot button, muscle memory guiding him when conscious thought failed. He managed to press it and felt the yoke go neutral under his hands as the autopilot engaged, keeping the plane straight and level. "Emma," he tried to turn toward her, but his neck muscles wouldn't cooperate properly. "Emma, honey." "Dad, you're scaring me." Emma's voice rose with fear. Scout sensed her distress and whined, pressing against her side. Sarah slumped sideways in her seat, her head lolling against the window. Her eyes were half closed, her breathing shallow but steady. The water bottle fell from her lap, rolling into the footwell with a hollow plastic sound. "Mom!" Emma shrieked. She unbuckled her seatbelt and lunged forward, grabbing her mother's shoulder. "Mom, wake up!" David tried to reach for the radio, knowing he needed to call for help, but his arm felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. The microphone was right there, inches from his hand, but the distance seemed impossible to cross. His vision tunneled, darkness creeping in from the edges. "Dad, what's happening?" Emma shook her mother harder, then reached for her father. "Dad, please." David's last conscious thought was of his daughter. He tried to tell her about the radio, tried to explain about the autopilot, tried to say that everything would be okay. But his lips wouldn't form the words. His eyes rolled back and he slumped forward against his harness, unconscious. "Dad!" Emma's scream filled the small cockpit. Silence. Only the steady rumble of the engine and the whistle of wind against the fuselage. Emma's heart hammered so hard she could hear it in her ears. She shook her father's shoulder violently, then her mother's. Neither responded. Their heads lolled limply, bodies held in place only by their seatbelts. "No, no, no, no," Emma chanted, her voice breaking. "Wake up, please wake up." She pressed her fingers against her mother's neck the way she'd seen on TV, searching frantically for a pulse. There, she felt it steady and strong. Relief flooded through her for 1 second before terror crashed back. Her father, she needed to check her father. She reached between the seats, her small hand finding his wrist. Pulse there too. They were alive, but they wouldn't wake up. Emma's breath came in short, sharp gasps. Scout whimpered and licked her face, trying to comfort her. She wrapped her arms around the dog, burying her face in his fur for just a moment, trying to stop the panic that threatened to overwhelm her completely. "Think, Emma, think," she whispered to herself, her father's voice echoing in her memory from countless lessons. "Panic kills pilots. Stay calm, assess the situation, then act." She forced herself to look at the instrument panel, really look at it. The autopilot light was on. She knew that green light meant the plane was flying itself. That was good, wasn't it? Her eyes found the altimeter, 10,500 feet. Airspeed, 140 knots. Heading, 180 degrees south. The fuel gauge showed just under half full. Outside the windows, the Wyoming wilderness stretched endlessly in every direction. Mountains in the distance, forests below. She couldn't see a single building, road, or any sign of civilization. If they crashed here. Emma's stomach clenched with nausea. She couldn't think about crashing. She had to think about solutions. The radio. Her parents always used the radio to talk to air traffic control. Someone out there could help, but Emma had never actually used it herself. She'd watched, listened, learned the proper phrases, but watching wasn't the same as doing. Her hand trembled as she reached for the microphone clipped to the panel between the front seats. It felt heavy, foreign in her small hand. There was a button on the side, push to talk, her father had explained once. Emma stared at the microphone, then at her unconscious parents, then out at the empty sky around them. They were flying at over 2 miles high, with no one conscious at the controls. The autopilot would keep them flying straight until they ran out of fuel. Then they would fall. Unless she did something. Emma's throat was tight with fear, but she raised the microphone to her lips. Her finger found the button. She pressed it, hearing a soft click. "Hello?" Her voice came out as barely a whisper. She cleared her throat and tried again, louder this time, fighting to keep it from shaking. "Hello? Is anyone out there? Can anyone hear me? I need help, please, someone help us." She released the button and waited, staring at the radio, silently begging for a response. The seconds stretched into eternity. Then, crackling through the static, a man's voice. "This is Denver Center. We hear you. What's your situation?" Emma's eyes filled with tears of relief. "My parents won't wake up," she said, her voice breaking. "I'm alone and I don't know how to fly." Marcus Chen had been an air traffic controller for 15 years. He'd guided planes through storms, talked pilots through mechanical failures, and coordinated emergency landings. But nothing, absolutely nothing, had prepared him for the small, terrified voice of a child coming through his headset. "Say again your last transmission," Marcus said, his voice automatically calm even as his pulse quickened. "And please state your aircraft type and location if you know it." In the Cessna, Emma's hands shook so badly she nearly dropped the microphone. Scalp pressed against her legs, sensing her terror. She forced herself to breathe, to think. What would her father say? What information did they need? "We're in a Cessna," she said, trying to remember the exact type. 182, I think. My dad calls it a 182. We left from Montana this morning, going to Colorado. My name is Emma Morrison. I'm 11 years old." Marcus was already pulling up flight plans, his fingers flying across his keyboard. Behind him, his supervisor, Janet Rodriguez, heard the transmission and immediately moved to his station, her face grave. "Okay, Emma, you're doing great," Marcus said, keeping his voice steady and reassuring. "I'm Marcus and I'm going to help you. Can you tell me what happened to your parents?" Emma looked at her mother and father, both still slumped unconscious in their seats. They said they felt weird and lightheaded. Then Mom fell asleep and then Dad did too. I can't wake them up. I tried shaking them and yelling, but they won't wake up." Her voice rose with panic. "Did they say anything about feeling sick before you took off?" Marcus asked, nodding as Janet handed him a note. "Possible hypoxia. Checking flight plans now." "No, they were fine. Everything was fine." Emma's voice cracked. "We were just flying and talking and then they weren't fine anymore." Marcus found the flight plan. N-73QB, Cessna 182, departed Whitefish, Montana at 8:47 local time, destination Colorado Springs. 2 adults, 1 minor, 1 dog. He glanced at the clock, 9:15. They'd been airborne for 28 minutes. "Emma, I need you to check something for me. Are your parents breathing? Can you see their chests moving?" Emma leaned forward, watching carefully. Yes, they're breathing. Their hearts are beating too, I checked." "That's excellent, Emma. You did exactly right." Marcus made a note. "Now I need you to look at the instrument panel in front of you. Do you see a light that says autopilot or has the letters AP?" Emma scanned the panel, her eyes darting across dozens of switches and gauges. There, a green light. "Yes, it's on. It's lit up green." "Perfect. That means the plane is flying itself right now, keeping you straight and level. That's very good news." Marcus looked at Janet, who was on the phone coordinating with the FAA emergency response team. "Emma, can you tell me what number you see on the altimeter? It's a gauge that shows how high you are." Emma found it. She'd watched this gauge countless times during flights with her parents. "It says 10,500. "Good, and the airspeed indicator, it looks like a speedometer. What does that show?" 140. Marcus quickly calculated. At 140 knots with half fuel, they had maybe 90 minutes of flying time. Not much margin for error, but enough time to formulate a plan. "Emma, you're doing an amazing job reading these instruments. Your parents taught you well." "My dad's a pilot. He was in the Air Force." Emma's voice trembled. "My mom's a pilot too. They're both really good. They've flown for years and years. Why won't they wake up?" Marcus exchanged glances with Janet. If both experienced pilots had lost consciousness simultaneously, hypoxia was almost certainly the culprit, oxygen deprivation at altitude. But he couldn't worry Emma with technical explanations right now. "Emma, sometimes at high altitude, if there's a problem with the oxygen system, people can fall into a very deep sleep. The important thing is their breathing, and we're going to get all of you on the ground safely. Then doctors can help your mom and dad. Do you understand?" "Will they be okay?" Emma whispered. "We're going to do everything we can to make sure everyone is okay," Marcus said carefully. But right now, I need you to be very brave and help me. Can you do that?" "I'm scared." Emma's admission came out as barely more than a whisper. "I know you are. Being scared is okay. I'm going to be right here with you the whole time, and we're going to figure this out together." Marcus pulled up a sectional chart on his screen. "Emma, can you see anything out the window? Any towns or landmarks?" Emma pressed her face against the window, looking down at the landscape below. "Just mountains and forests. Lots of trees. I don't see any buildings or roads or anything." Wyoming wilderness. Miles from any suitable landing area. Marcus's mind raced through options. They needed to get her to an airport, but which one? And more importantly, could an 11-year-old girl with no flight training actually land an airplane? His desk phone rang. Janet answered it, then held it out to him, mouthing, "Flight instructor, says he can help." Marcus grabbed the phone while keeping Emma on the radio frequency. "This is Marcus Chen, Denver Center." "Marcus, my name is Jack Patterson. I'm a certified flight instructor, been teaching for 20 years. I heard the transmission. I'm 15 minutes from Rawlins Regional Airport. If you can vector that little girl there, I can talk her through landing." Marcus felt a surge of hope. "Stand by." He keyed the radio again. "Emma, are you still with me?" "Yes." Her voice was small but steady. "Listen carefully. I have a friend named Jack who's a flight instructor. He teaches people how to fly. He's going to help us. But first, I need to know, have you ever touched the controls of the plane before, even just playing around?" Emma thought about the countless times her father had let her hold the yoke during straight and level flight, how he'd shown her how a turn worked, how to read the instruments. "Yes, my dad lets me practice sometimes. Just small stuff like turns. He always has his hands near the controls though." "That's good, Emma. That's very good." Marcus pulled up the flight path to Rawlins, 40 miles southwest of their current position. "We're going to do something that might sound scary, but I promise you can do it. We're going to teach you to fly this airplane, and then we're going to help you land it. Do you trust me?" Emma looked at her unconscious parents, at Scout's trusting eyes, at the endless sky around them. She thought about the fuel gauge slowly ticking down. She thought about what would happen if she did nothing. They'd fly until the fuel ran out, and then. She couldn't let that happen. "I trust you," Emma said, her voice stronger now. "Tell me what to do." Marcus took a deep breath. "First, I need you to do something very important. Look at the throttle. It's a black knob your dad pushes and pulls. Don't touch it yet, just locate it." "I see it." "Good, now look at the yoke, the wheel in front of the pilot's seat. That's what controls the airplane. Emma, I'm going to teach you how to fly." Emma's hand reached toward the yoke, then stopped, hovering in the air. Her whole body trembled. This was insane. She was 11 years old. She couldn't fly an airplane. But her parents couldn't wake up, and if she didn't try, they would all die. Emma's small hand closed around the yoke. "I'm ready," she said. "Teach me." Patterson's pickup truck skidded into the parking lot of Rawlins Regional Airport, gravel spraying behind the tires. He'd broken every speed limit getting there, but this wasn't a time for caution. As he burst through the door of the small terminal building, airport manager Bill Hayes was already waiting, his face pale. "They're patching you through now," Bill said, gesturing to the radio setup on the desk. "Kid's been on the frequency for 6 minutes. Denver Center is coordinating." Jack grabbed the headset just as Marcus's voice came through. "Jack, you there?" "I'm here, put me through to her." "Emma," Marcus said, his voice still calm and steady, "I have Jack on the line now. He's going to teach you how to fly. Listen carefully to everything he says, okay?" "Okay." Emma's voice was so small, so frightened, that Jack felt his chest tighten. He had a daughter about the same age, the thought of her alone in a plane. "Emma, my name is Jack Patterson," he said, forcing warmth and confidence into his voice. "I teach people how to fly airplanes for a living. I've taught hundreds of students, and you know what? You've already got an advantage over all of them." I do, Emma sounded skeptical. Absolutely. You've flown hundreds of hours as a passenger, you've watched your parents. Your brain has absorbed more about flying than you realize. We're just going to bring that knowledge forward. Jack pulled out a notepad, sketching a quick diagram. Now, before we touch anything, I need you to understand something important. The autopilot is your friend. It's keeping you safe right now. We're not going to turn it off until you're ready. Understand? Yes. Good, let's start simple. Look at the instrument panel. Find the heading indicator. It looks like a compass with an airplane symbol in the middle. Emma scanned the panel. I see it. It says 180. Perfect. That means you're flying south. Now I want you to just watch it for a moment. Is the number changing? Emma stared at the instrument. No, it's staying the same. Excellent. That's the autopilot keeping you on course. Now look at the altimeter again. What's it reading? 10,500. Still the same. Good. Jack glanced at Bill, who was monitoring radar images on a laptop. Marcus, what's the fuel situation? She reported half tanks earlier. That gives us approximately 85 minutes. Jack did quick math. Plenty of time if everything went smoothly. But teaching someone to land in less than 90 minutes, he pushed the doubt away. Emma, we're going to practice something very, very simple first. Are you sitting in the back seat? Yes. I need you to climb into the front left seat. That's your dad's seat. Can you do that safely? Emma looked at the narrow gap between the front seats. Scout was in the way, pressed against her legs. I have to move my dog first. That's fine, take your time. Safety first always. Emma unbuckled Scout's harness and gently pushed him to the far side of the back seat. Stay, Scout. Good boy. The dog whined but obeyed. She carefully climbed between the seats, trying not to bump any controls. Her father's body was slumped to the right, held by his seatbelt. Up close, she could see his chest rising and falling steadily. I'm in the seat. Great, buckle up nice and tight. Emma pulled the seatbelt across her lap and chest, clicking it into place. From the pilot's seat, everything looked different, more immediate, more real. Her feet dangled above the rudder pedals, not quite reaching them. The yoke was right in front of her, and beyond the propeller, the endless Wyoming sky stretched out. I'm buckled. Excellent. Now, put your hands on the yoke. That's the wheel in front of you. Don't move it, just hold it gently. Emma's small hands wrapped around the yoke. It was surprisingly heavy, solid. She could feel a slight vibration through it. Feel that? Jack asked. That's the autopilot making tiny corrections to keep you level. Now I want you to understand what the yoke does. When you turn it right, like turning a car's steering wheel, the plane banks right. Turn it left, the plane banks left. When you pull it back toward you, the nose goes up. Push it forward, the nose goes down. Say it back to me. Emma repeated. Right is right, left is left. Pull back goes up, push forward goes down. Perfect. Now we're going to disengage the autopilot and you're going to feel the yoke become active in your hands. Don't panic. I'm going to talk you through this. Ready? Wait, Emma's voice shot up with fear. What if I mess up? You won't mess up because I'm right here with you. And Emma, if anything feels wrong, there's a button on the yoke, see it. It says AP, push that and the autopilot comes back on. It's your safety net. Jack paused. But you won't need it. You know why? Why? Because your parents already taught you how to do this. You just don't know that you know. Trust yourself. Emma took a deep breath. Through the windscreen, she could see a hawk soaring far below, riding thermals with effortless grace. If a bird could fly, surely she could too. I'm ready. Okay, see the autopilot button on the panel. The one that's lit up green, press it. Emma's finger trembled as she reached for the button. She pressed it. The green light went off. Immediately, she felt the yoke come alive in her hands, suddenly responsive, suddenly real. The plane dipped slightly to the right and Emma gasped. Small correction, Jack said calmly. Turn the yoke left just a tiny bit. Emma turned left, too much. The plane banked sharply and the horizon tilted sickeningly. Back right, easy, easy. She overcorrected right. The plane rocked. Smaller movements, Emma. Imagine you're petting Scout. Gentle, easy. Emma forced herself to breathe, to move more delicately. She made a tiny adjustment left. The wings slowly leveled. The horizon straightened. There you go, Jack's voice filled with genuine pride. You just corrected your first bank. You're flying, Emma. You're actually flying the airplane. A strange feeling washed over Emma, terror mixed with something else. Wonder, pride. She was keeping the plane level. Her hands on the controls were keeping them in the air. Now let's practice a turn, Jack said. Very gentle, turn the yoke right just a little bit and watch what happens. Emma turned right. The world tilted, the right wing dipping down toward the earth. She could see the landscape rotating below. Hold it there, good, now bring it back to level. She reversed the turn, and the wings came level again. Beautiful, now try left. For the next 20 minutes they practiced. Right turn, level off. Left turn, level off. Each time, Emma's movements became smoother, more confident. Jack praised every success, gently corrected every mistake. Marcus watched the radar track, seeing the small deviations in the Cessna's path as Emma practiced. Behind him, the Denver Center operations room had filled with people, controllers, supervisors, FAA officials. Everyone stood silent, listening. Emma, Jack finally said, you're doing incredible. I think you're ready for the next step. What's that? Jack exchanged looks with Bill, who pointed to the radar showing Rawlins Airport 28 miles away. We're going to point you toward an airport, and then I'm going to teach you how to land. Emma's hands tightened on the yoke. Land, but I just learned how to turn. And you learned it perfectly. Landing is just controlled descent, which is just a turn downward. You can do this. Jack kept his voice confident, certain. Emma, look at me through the radio. Can you hear how much I believe in you? Yes. I'm not lying to you or being nice. I genuinely believe you can do this. Do you believe me? Emma thought about the last 20 minutes, how impossible it had seemed at first, how she'd actually done it. She thought about her unconscious parents, about Scout waiting patiently in the back, about the fuel gauge ticking down. I believe you, she said. Then let's bring you home. Jack spread a sectional chart across the desk at Rawlins Regional Airport, tracing the route with his finger. 28 miles. In a Cessna 182 at cruise speed, that was about 12 minutes of flying time. But they couldn't just point Emma straight at the runway. She needed practice, needed to build confidence, needed to understand how to control altitude and speed. Emma, let's talk about getting you to the airport, Jack said into the microphone. Right now you're flying south. I need you to fly southwest instead. That means we're going to make a turn. A real one this time, not just practice. Ready? Emma's hands were sweaty on the yoke. Through the windscreen, she could see nothing but wilderness stretching to the horizon. How do I know which way is southwest? Great question. Look at that heading indicator, the compass. Right now it says 180, which is south. Southwest is 225. So we're going to turn right and watch that number increase. When it gets to 225, you'll stop the turn. Makes sense? I think so. Okay, start your turn. Nice and easy like we practiced. Emma turned the yoke right. The plane banked and she watched the heading indicator begin to change. 185, 190, 200. The numbers clicked by steadily as the world rotated beneath her. Her heart hammered, but her hands stayed relatively steady. 220, she called out. Almost there, keep turning. 225. Perfect, now level the wings. Emma brought the yoke back to center. The plane wobbled slightly but settled into level flight on the new heading. She just navigated her first real turn. Not just practice, she'd actually changed course, pointing the plane where it needed to go. Outstanding, Jack said, and she could hear the genuine smile in his voice. Emma, you're a natural. Now we need to start descending. Right now you're way too high to land. We need to come down gradually. You with me?" Emma looked at the altimeter, still reading 10,500 feet. The ground looked impossibly far below. How far down? "The airport elevation is about 6,800 feet. We'll level off at 8,000 for now, practice some more, then make our final approach. To descend, you're going to do two things. First, reduce power by pulling back the throttle, that black knob. Second, gently push the yoke forward to lower the nose. Not too much, just a tiny bit." Emma's hand hovered over the throttle. Her father had let her touch it before, showing her how it controlled engine power. She gripped it and pulled back slowly. The engine noise decreased noticeably, and she felt the plane's speed begin to drop. "Good. How much did you pull it back?" "Maybe an inch." "Perfect. Now tiny push forward on the yoke, and I mean tiny, like pushing a baby swing." Emma pressed the yoke forward. The nose dipped, and suddenly she could see more of the ground through the windscreen. Her stomach lurched at the sensation of descending. The altimeter began unwinding. 10,400, 10,300, 10,200. "That's it, you're descending at about 500 feet per minute. That's perfect." Jack monitored the radar, watching Emma's altitude decrease steadily. "How does it feel?" "Scary," Emma admitted, "but I'm doing it." "You absolutely are. Now keep the nose steady and watch your altitude. When you get to 10,000 feet, tell me." Emma watched the numbers tick down, her eyes flicking between the altimeter and the horizon, trying to keep the wings level while descending. It was like patting your head and rubbing your stomach, two things to concentrate on at once, but she was doing it. 10,000. "Great, keep going, nice and steady." As Emma descended through 9,500 feet, Marcus's voice joined the frequency. "Emma, this is Marcus again. I just want you to know that emergency crews are standing by at Rawlins Airport. Ambulances are there for your parents. Fire trucks, everyone. They're all ready and waiting for you." Emma's throat tightened. She'd been so focused on flying that she'd almost forgotten why she was doing this. She glanced back at her mother and father, still unconscious in their seats. "Will my parents be okay?" Marcus chose his words carefully. "The doctors are going to take excellent care of them as soon as you land. But Emma, they need you to get them there. You're doing everything right." In the back seat, Scout suddenly stood up and barked, a sharp, worried sound. Emma twisted to look. Her father's head had lolled further forward, and for a terrifying moment she thought something had changed. But no, his chest was still rising and falling. Scout was just anxious, feeding off her fear. "It's okay, boy," she called back. "We're going to be okay." She turned back to the instruments. 9,000 feet, still descending. Her hands ached from gripping the yoke so tightly, and she forced herself to relax her grip. 8,500, she reported. "Excellent. At 8,000, I want you to level off. That means stop descending. You'll push the throttle forward to add power and pull back gently on the yoke to raise the nose. Ready?" "Ready." Emma watched the altitude unwind. 8,200, 8,100, 8,000. "Now." She pushed the throttle forward and pulled back on the yoke. The nose came up, the descent stopped, and the plane leveled out. The altimeter held steady at 8,000 feet. "Perfect. Emma, you just completed a controlled descent and leveled off. Do you understand what that means?" "What?" "It means you can control this airplane in all three dimensions. You can turn, you can climb, you can descend. Those are the fundamentals of flying. Everything else is just refinement." A small spark of pride flickered in Emma's chest, quickly overwhelmed by renewed fear as she realized what came next. "What about landing?" "Landing is just another controlled descent," Jack said. "But first, let's practice some more. I want you to turn left heading 180 back to south." For the next 15 minutes, Jack put Emma through her paces. Turn right to heading 270, descend to 7,500 feet. Turn left to heading 090, climb back to 8,000. With each maneuver, Emma's confidence grew incrementally. Her corrections became smaller, smoother. She began to anticipate what the plane would do. Bill tapped Jack's shoulder and pointed to the radar. "She's 8 miles out. Fuel." Jack keyed the radio. "Emma, check your fuel gauge for me." Emma looked. The needle had dropped noticeably. "It's at, 1/4, maybe a little less." Jack did quick math. They had maybe 40 minutes of fuel remaining. Plenty of time, but no room for multiple landing attempts. They'd get one shot at this. "Okay, Emma, you've been practicing for 25 minutes now. You're flying this airplane like you've been doing it for years. I think it's time." "Time for what?" Emma asked, though she already knew. "Time to bring you to the airport. We're going to line you up with the runway, talk you through your approach, and get you safely on the ground. Your parents need medical attention, and you need to be on solid ground. Are you ready?" Emma looked down at the landscape below. She could see a town now, Rawlins, she assumed. Small buildings, roads, the geometric pattern of civilization. And there, a thin strip of gray concrete cutting through the brown earth. The runway. It looked impossibly small, impossibly narrow. How was she supposed to land on that? "Emma," Jack's voice was gentle, "are you still with me?" She thought about her mother's laugh that morning at breakfast, her father's hand ruffling her hair during the pre-flight inspection, Scout's tail wagging as they loaded the plane, the journal entry she'd started about cloud formations, never finished. If she didn't do this, none of that would matter anymore. "I'm ready," Emma said, her voice steady despite her pounding heart. "Tell me what to do." "First, we turn you toward the runway. You're going to fly straight at it, get lined up nice and centered. Then we'll descend together, nice and gradual. I'll be with you every second, every foot of the way. You're not alone, Emma. Understand?" "I understand." "Then let's bring you home. Turn right to heading 240. Emma turned the yoke and the Cessna banked toward Rawlins Regional Airport, toward safety, toward the hardest thing she'd ever have to do. Toward the runway that would either save them all or end everything. On the ground at Rawlins Regional Airport, Fire Chief Tom Bradley coordinated the emergency response with military precision. 3 fire trucks positioned along the runway, foam systems ready. 2 ambulances waited near the terminal, paramedics checking their equipment for the 3rd time. A life flight helicopter sat on the tarmac, rotors still, crew standing by. Police had blocked all roads leading to the airport. And then there were the people. Airport staff, off-duty pilots, maintenance workers, townspeople who'd heard the news. They lined the fence, silent, watching the sky, watching for a little girl trying to do the impossible. Bill Hayes stood beside Jack, holding a phone to his ear. Her grandparents are on the line. They're in Colorado Springs. They've been listening to the transmission. They want to talk to her. Jack shook his head firmly. "Not now, she needs total focus. Tell them she's going to make it." In the Cessna, Emma's eyes locked onto the runway ahead. From 8,000 feet, it looked like a gray thread stretched across brown fabric. Jack had turned her onto what he called final approach, pointed straight at the runway, 5 miles out. "Emma, you see the runway?" Jack asked. "Yes, it looks really small." "It's going to get bigger as you get closer, I promise. Right now, I need you to focus on keeping the nose pointed right at it. Imagine there's a line painted in the sky from your airplane straight to that runway. You want to stay on that line." Emma gripped the yoke, making tiny corrections. The plane drifted slightly left. She corrected right, overcorrected, back left. The wings wobbled. "Easy, easy," Jack soothed. "Smaller movements. The plane wants to fly straight. You're just guiding it." "Okay." Emma took a breath, forcing her hands to relax. The wobbling decreased. "Good. Now we're going to start descending again. But this time, we're not leveling off. We're going all the way down to the runway, with me." "With you?" "Pull the throttle back about 1/2 inch." Emma pulled. The engine noise dropped. Now, gentle pressure forward on the yoke, just enough to start the nose dropping. She pushed. The nose dipped and the runway began to grow in the windscreen, slowly at first, then more noticeably. The altimeter started unwinding. 7900, 7,800, 7,700. Perfect descent rate, Marcus reported, watching the radar. She's doing it. In the Denver Center operations room, 30 people stood in absolute silence, listening. In fire stations across Wyoming, crews gathered around radios. In the Rawlins Hospital, doctors and nurses paused in hallways, listening to the scanner. An entire region held its breath. "Altitude, Emma," Jack prompted. 7,500. "Good, 4 miles from the runway. Keep that nose pointed at the center line. See that white stripe down the middle of the runway?" Emma squinted. She could see it now, a thin white line. "Yes." "That's your target. Keep the nose pointed right at it." The town of Rawlins was clearly visible now. Emma could make out individual buildings, cars on streets, the airport layout, and people, tiny figures lined up along the fence, all watching her, all waiting to see if she could do this. Her hands trembled, the yoke shook in her grip. "Talk to me, Emma," Jack said, sensing her fear through the radio. "What are you thinking?" "There are so many people down there," Emma whispered. "What if I crash? What if I mess up and everyone sees me fail?" Jack's voice became gentle but firm. "Emma, look at your parents. Look at them right now." Emma glanced back. Her mother and father still unconscious, heads lolled forward. Her father's hand hung limply at his side. Her mother's hair had fallen across her face. "They're counting on you," Jack said. "Not all those people on the ground. Your mom and dad. They need you to be brave for just a few more minutes. Can you do that for them?" Emma's jaw set with determination. "Yes." "Then let's fly. Altitude." 6,800. 3 miles out. You're right on target. Airspeed." Emma checked the gauge. 120. "That's fast. Pull the throttle back a bit more. We want to slow down before we land." Emma pulled. The engine quieted further and she felt the plane decelerate. The sensation was unsettling, like the plane might just fall out of the sky. "It feels weird," she said nervously. "That's normal. The plane is designed to fly slowly. Trust it. Now you're going to feel the controls get a little mushy as you slow down. That's okay. Just keep making those small corrections." The runway was growing rapidly now, no longer a thread but a clear strip of concrete. Emma could see the markings on it, numbers, arrows, that white center line. She could see the emergency vehicles, their lights flashing silently. She could see people. "Altitude. 6,400. 2 miles out. You're a little high, Emma. Let's increase our descent. Push the yoke forward just a bit more." Emma pushed. The nose dropped steeper. The ground rushed up faster, too fast, way too fast. "Jack, it's coming up too fast." Panic crept into her voice. "You're okay, you're okay. That's a normal approach angle. I know it looks scary, but it's right. Trust the instruments, not your eyes." Altitude. 6,000. The numbers were spinning down quickly now. 5,900, 5,800. 1 mile. You're doing great. Start reducing power more. Pull the throttle back. Emma pulled. The engine became quieter still, barely more than a purr. The plane felt like it was falling now, dropping through the air toward the rapidly approaching ground. She could see the numbers on the runway. 28. She could see the texture of the concrete, the grass on either side, the vehicles positioned along the taxiway. She could see faces of people looking up at her. 5,500. Half-mile out. Emma, see those 2 rows of lights on either side of the runway. Those are going to guide you in. Keep the airplane centered between them. The lights appeared, red and white, flanking the approach path. Emma adjusted slightly left, lining up between them. 5,200. The ground was close now, terrifyingly close. She could see individual blades of grass, small rocks on the runway, a bird taking flight from the fence. Scout barked from the back seat, sensing something was happening. 4,900. Emma's voice rose with fear. You're almost there, keep it steady. When I tell you to, you're going to pull back on the yoke, gentle but firm. That's called the flare. It'll slow your descent right before touchdown, but not yet. Hold what you have. The fence at the runway threshold rushed toward her. She was going to hit it. She was too low. No, now too high. She couldn't tell anymore. 4,700. Quarter mile, hold steady. The runway filled the entire windscreen. Emma could see every crack in the pavement, every painted letter. The threshold numbers, 28, were right there, right in front of her. Pull back now, pull back on the yoke. Emma pulled. The nose rose, the descent slowed. The ground was right there, 10 feet below, 5 feet, 3 feet. Keep pulling more. The world became a blur of concrete and grass and flashing lights, and then, wham! The Cessna's main wheels slammed into the runway with a force that rattled Emma's teeth. The impact shot through the landing gear, through the fuselage, through the seat, through her entire body. For one frozen instant, everything seemed to hang in balance. Would the plane stay down or cartwheel into disaster? Then the wheels bounced. The plane leaped back into the air like a stone skipping across water, rising 15 feet off the runway. Emma screamed, her hands locked on the yoke in a death grip. Through the windscreen, she saw the runway drop away, then start coming back up. It's bouncing, she shrieked into the radio. Push forward, push the yoke forward. Jack's voice cut through her panic like a blade. Emma shoved the yoke forward. The nose dropped sharply, and the plane plummeted back toward the earth. The second impact was even harder than the first, a bone-jarring crash that made Scout yelp in the back seat. Equipment rattled in the cargo area. Her father's unconscious body jerked against his harness. This time the wheels grabbed. The plane stayed down. But now Emma faced a new terror. The Cessna was racing down the runway at 70 miles per hour, and she had no idea how to stop it. Brakes, Emma, brakes, Jack shouted. Push the pedals at your feet. Emma's legs were too short. Her feet barely reached the rudder pedals, and she couldn't feel the brake mechanism at the top of each pedal. She stretched, pointing her toes, straining against the seatbelt. I can't reach, pure panic now. The runway was disappearing beneath her at terrifying speed. The far end was approaching fast, and beyond that grass, then a ditch, then a fence. If she ran off the runway at this speed. Push harder, stand on them if you have to. Emma unbuckled her seatbelt without thinking, half standing in the seat to get more leverage. Her right foot found the top of the pedal and she stomped down with all her might. The right brake grabbed hard. The plane lurched violently to the right. Wrong one, other foot, balance them. Jack's voice was urgent now, all calmness gone. Emma's left foot slammed onto the left pedal. The plane swerved back left, tires squealing on concrete. She was overcorrecting wildly, the plane zigzagging down the runway like a drunk driver. Right, left, right again. Her heart hammered so hard she thought it might explode. But the plane was slowing, 60 miles per hour, 50, 40. Both feet, even pressure on both pedals, Jack commanded. Emma pressed both feet down as hard as she could, her legs shaking with effort. The brakes screamed in protest. The plane's nose dipped forward from the deceleration, and for a terrifying second Emma thought they might flip, but the nose came back down. 30 miles per hour, 20. The plane was still swerving, but less violently now. Emma's arms ached from fighting the yoke, trying to keep the plane pointed straight. She could see the emergency vehicles clearly, so close she could make out the faces of firefighters in their trucks. 15 miles per hour, 10. Come on, stop, Emma pleaded through gritted teeth. The plane rolled forward, slower, wobbling like a bicycle losing momentum. 5 miles per hour. 3, 2. And then, 200 feet from the end of the runway, with grass and safety just ahead, the Cessna 182 shuddered to a complete stop. Emma sat frozen, her feet still jammed on the brakes, hands still clutching the yoke. Her whole body shook uncontrollably. The engine was still running, propeller still spinning, but they weren't moving. They were on the ground. They were stopped. They were alive. "Emma," Jack's voice came through the radio, thick with emotion. "Emma, are you okay?" She tried to speak but couldn't. Her throat was closed, her breath coming in gasps. Tears poured down her face, tears she hadn't known were there. "Emma, sweetheart, I need you to answer me." "We stopped," she finally managed, her voice barely a whisper. "We're on the ground, we stopped." "You did it, Emma. You landed the airplane. You saved your family." Through the windscreen, Emma saw emergency vehicles racing toward them, sirens silent but lights blazing. Fire trucks, ambulances, police cars, all converging on the small white and blue Cessna sitting crooked on the runway. "Emma, I need you to do one more thing for me," Jack said, his voice gentle now. "Can you reach the red mixture knob? It's usually red on the panel." Emma's hands were shaking so badly she could barely focus. "I see it." "Pull it all the way out. That'll shut down the engine." Emma pulled. The engine coughed, sputtered, and died. The propeller spun slower, and finally stopped. The sudden silence was deafening. All she could hear was her own ragged breathing, Scout's whimpering from the back seat, and the wail of approaching sirens. "Good girl, now sit tight. Help is coming." Emma slumped back in the seat, her whole body going limp. She turned to look at her parents. They were still unconscious but alive. She'd gotten them down. She'd saved them. The first fire truck screeched to a halt beside the plane. Firefighters in full gear leaped out, running toward the aircraft. A paramedic reached the pilot's door and yanked it open. "It's okay, sweetheart," the paramedic said, a woman with kind eyes and graying hair. "You're safe now, we've got you." Emma looked at her, and something inside her finally broke. All the terror, all the fear, all the impossible weight of the last hour came crashing down. She started sobbing, deep, wrenching sobs that shook her entire body. The paramedic reached in and unbuckled her seatbelt, then lifted Emma out of the seat as if she weighed nothing. Emma clung to her, burying her face in the woman's shoulder, crying so hard she couldn't breathe. "I know, honey, I know," the paramedic murmured, holding her tight. "You were so brave, so incredibly brave, but it's over now, you're safe." Behind them, more paramedics were working to extract David and Sarah from the plane, checking vitals, preparing stretchers. Someone was carefully helping Scout out, the dog shaking but unharmed. Radio chatter filled the air, medical codes, status updates, coordinates for the life flight helicopter. Fire Chief Bradley stood back, watching the organized chaos, tears streaming down his weathered face. In his 30 years of emergency response, he'd never seen anything like this. An 11-year-old girl with no training landing an airplane to save her family. At Rawlins Regional Airport Terminal, Jack Patterson sat slumped in his chair, headset still on, his hands trembling. Bill Hayes stood beside him, one hand on his shoulder. Neither man spoke. There were no words adequate for what they'd just witnessed. Through the terminal windows, they could see the crowd that had gathered, nearly 100 people now, all watching the emergency crews work around the stopped Cessna. Some were crying. Some were hugging each other. Some stood with hands over their mouths in disbelief. All of them had just watched a miracle. On the runway, Emma finally pulled back from the paramedic, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "My parents," she said, her voice hoarse. "Are they going to be okay?" The paramedic looked toward where David and Sarah were being loaded onto stretchers, oxygen masks already in place. "The doctors are going to take excellent care of them. They're breathing, their hearts are strong. You got them here in time, sweetheart. You did everything right." Emma watched as the stretchers were loaded into ambulances, lights already flashing. She wanted to go with them, to stay with her parents, but the paramedic was guiding her toward another ambulance. "We need to check you out too, make sure you're not hurt." "I'm not hurt," Emma insisted, though her whole body ached from tension. "I know, but it's procedure. You've been through something traumatic. We just want to make sure you're okay." As Emma climbed into the ambulance, she looked back one more time at the Cessna sitting on the runway, its nose slightly crooked, landing gear splayed, looking small and fragile in the vast expanse of concrete. That tiny airplane had been her prison and her salvation, her nightmare and her triumph. She climbed into it that morning as a child. She climbed out of it someone entirely different. The ambulance doors closed, and as they pulled away toward the hospital, Emma Morrison, 11 years old, terrified, exhausted, and somehow impossibly alive, finally let herself believe it was over. She had flown. She had landed. She had saved them all. Emma sat in the sterile hospital waiting room, wrapped in a blanket despite the warm air. A child psychologist named Dr. Chen sat beside her, not pushing, just present. Through the window, news vans crowded the parking lot, satellite dishes reaching toward the sky like mechanical flowers. She'd been at Rawlins Regional Hospital for 3 hours. 3 hours of doctors checking her reflexes, asking questions, shining lights in her eyes. 3 hours of not knowing if her parents would wake up. The door opened. A doctor in blue scrubs walked in, and Emma jumped to her feet, the blanket falling away. "Your parents are awake," the doctor said, smiling. "They're asking for you." Emma's knees nearly buckled with relief. Dr. Chen caught her arm, steadying her, and together they followed the doctor down the hallway. The fluorescent lights seemed too bright, the sounds too loud, everything amplified by exhaustion and emotion. Her father's room came first. David Morrison lay in the hospital bed, oxygen cannula in his nose, looking pale but alert. When he saw Emma in the doorway, his face crumpled. "Em," he whispered, his voice rough. Emma ran to him, climbing carefully onto the bed. David wrapped his arms around her, and she felt his body shake with silent sobs. "I'm sorry, baby girl. I'm so sorry. I should have checked the oxygen system more carefully. I should have." "You couldn't have known, Dad." Emma's own tears soaked into his hospital gown. "The doctor said it was a manufacturing defect. Nobody could have known." They held each other while David processed what he'd been told, that his 11-year-old daughter had flown and landed a plane by herself, that she'd saved all their lives. He pulled back to look at her face, really look at her. "You flew the plane," he said, wonder and horror mixing in his voice. "Emma, you actually flew it." "Jack helped me, and Marcus. I couldn't have done it alone." "But you did do it. You were alone up there and you did it." David's voice broke again. "You were so brave." Down the hall, Sarah Morrison was sitting up in bed when Emma entered. Her mother took one look at her and burst into tears, arms opening wide. Emma climbed into them, and Sarah held her daughter like she'd never let go. "My brave girl," Sarah murmured into Emma's hair. "My impossibly brave girl." The investigation took 6 weeks. The FAA and NTSB descended on the accident site with scientific precision. They discovered a hairline crack in the oxygen system's pressure regulator valve, a manufacturing defect affecting that specific production batch. At altitude, the crack had allowed oxygen to leak slowly, causing hypoxia so gradual the pilots never recognized the symptoms until it was too late. The Morrison family had done everything right. The equipment had failed them. The manufacturer issued a recall. The Morrison family received official clearance. No pilot error, no negligence. Just catastrophic bad luck and one extraordinary little girl. But official reports didn't erase trauma. Emma's nightmare started 3 days after they returned home to Montana. She'd wake screaming, tangled in sheets, seeing the runway rushing up at her over and over. Sometimes in the dreams she crashed. Sometimes her parents never woke up. Sometimes she just fell and fell and fell through an endless sky. David and Sarah, dealing with their own guilt and trauma, found a family therapist specializing in PTSD. Dr. Rivera had kind eyes and didn't push Emma to talk before she was ready. "You know what the hardest part was?" Emma finally said in their fourth session. "Everyone keeps calling me a hero, but I wasn't brave. I was just terrified the whole time." Dr. Rivera leaned forward. "Emma, do you know what courage actually is?" "Not being scared." "No, courage is being absolutely terrified and doing what needs to be done anyway. Real heroes aren't fearless, they're scared out of their minds. They just don't let the fear stop them." The therapist paused. "You felt every bit of that terror and still landed that plane. That's the definition of bravery." The media attention was overwhelming at first. National news, morning shows, magazine covers, everyone wanted Emma's story. Her parents shielded her from most of it, but some got through. The interview requests, the book deals, the movie producers. Sarah Morrison told them all the same thing. "Our daughter is 11 years old and recovering from trauma." The answer is no. But Emma did agree to one thing. 6 months after the incident, she visited Rawlins Regional Airport to thank the emergency crews. Fire Chief Bradley cried when he met her. Jack Patterson drove down from Wyoming to see her in person. When Jack saw Emma standing on the tarmac where she'd landed, he knelt down to her eye level. "How are you doing, kiddo?" "Better," Emma said honestly. "Some days are hard, but Dr. Rivera says that's normal." "You know what I've been telling people," Jack said. "I've taught over 300 students to fly. You learned faster than any of them." Emma managed a small smile. "I had good teachers. My parents taught me first, without me even knowing they were teaching me." As they stood there talking, a Cessna 182, different from her family's but the same model, taxied past. Emma's body went rigid. Her breath came faster. Jack noticed immediately. "It's okay to be scared of planes now," he said gently. "After what you went through, that makes perfect sense." But Emma was staring at the Cessna with an expression Jack couldn't quite read. Not just fear, something else mixed in, something that looked almost like longing. 9 months after the incident, on a crisp March morning, David Morrison stood beside his newly purchased Cessna 182. The oxygen system had been inspected, re-inspected, and upgraded with redundant safety features. He'd been flying again for 2 months, slowly rebuilding his confidence. Emma stood beside him, hands in her jacket pockets, looking at the plane. "You don't have to do this," David said quietly. "Nobody expects you to ever get in a small plane again." "I know," Emma's voice was steady. "But I want to. I've been thinking about it for weeks. I think I need to." Sarah stood nearby, ready to support whatever Emma decided. Scout sat at her feet, tail wagging, oblivious to the weight of the moment. "Just a short flight," David promised. 20 minutes. We stay in the pattern close to the airport. Anytime you want to come back, we come back. Deal." "Deal." The pre-flight inspection was thorough, almost obsessive. David checked everything twice, then a third time. Finally, they climbed in. Emma buckled herself into the back seat, her hands trembling slightly. Scout settled beside her, and she buried her fingers in his fur. The engine started. Emma's breath caught, memories flooding back, but different memories this time. Not just the terror, but the wonder too. The feeling of the yoke in her hands, the miracle of keeping a machine in the sky, the impossible things she'd done. They taxied to the runway. Emma's heart pounded, but she didn't ask to stop. David advanced the throttle, and the Cessna accelerated down the runway. The wheels lifted off, and they climbed into the Montana sky. For the first minute, Emma sat rigid, eyes squeezed shut. Then slowly she opened them. Below, the world spread out in familiar patterns, mountains, forests, rivers. The morning sun painted everything gold. It was beautiful. Emma looked at her father, at his hands calm and confident on the controls. She looked at her mother in the co-pilot seat, turning to smile back at her. She thought about that terrifying day 9 months ago, and the impossible thing that had happened. She'd been broken by that day, yes, traumatized, changed forever. The nightmares still came sometimes, though less frequently now. She still felt anxiety around airports, around planes. But she'd also been transformed. "Dad," Emma said over the intercom. "Yeah, sweetheart. When I'm 16, will you teach me to fly for real this time?" David's eyes met hers in the mirror, shining with tears. "Are you sure?" Emma looked out the window at the vast sky, at the earth far below, at the impossible distance between them. She thought about courage and fear, about how they weren't opposites but partners in the same dance. "I'm sure," she said. "Someone once told me I was a natural." As the Cessna banked gently over the Montana wilderness, Emma Morrison smiled, really smiled, for the first time in 9 months. The girl who had saved her family at 11 years old was already planning her future at 12. She would become a pilot. She would spend her life in the sky. Because she'd learned the most important lesson any pilot could know. That courage wasn't the absence of fear, but the decision to fly anyway.